and are televised. The Planning Commission will first approve the consent agenda and then the regular agenda. In order to place certain non-controversial items on the Commission's consent agenda, Planning staff and Planning Commission apply the following criteria. First, the request conforms with Sioux Falls 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Second, Planning staff recommends approval of the request. Third, there are no audience members present or written comments received in opposition to the request. And fourth, the application meets all conditions and requirements of the Sioux Falls zoning ordinance. Once the consent agenda has been approved, those agenda items have been approved and members of the public are free to leave. For the regular agenda, the following normal public hearing procedure will be followed for each item. By first requesting Planning staff to present a brief report on that item. Second, the petitioner or representative will be requested to come forward and make a statement or answer questions. After the petitioner has spoken, anyone from the audience who wishes to address the agenda item shall be recognized. Then the Planning Commission will discuss the matter further and take appropriate action. We ask that anybody addressing the Planning Commission move to the podium microphone, identify themselves, and state their address for the record. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. And as a courtesy to everyone here tonight, we ask that you either turn off or silence your electronic devices. This meeting is being televised on Channel 16 and will be rebroadcast Saturday at 10 a.m., Tuesday at 7 p.m., Wednesday at 1 a.m. Thank you for your cooperation.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Planning Commission. I will read the consent agenda items. Item number 1 is approval of the January 5th, 2011 minutes of the regular meeting. Item number 2 is plats. Item number 3 is a rezone from the RS1 and RS2 residential districts to the RC Recreational Conservation District for allowed uses at the east side of South T. Ellis Road and West 22nd Street. Item number 4 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to develop a site greater than an acre to allow for off-sale alcohol within 500 feet of a school at 1901 East 10th Street. Item number 5 is a conditional use permit in the C4 Planned Commercial District to allow off-sale alcohol within 500 feet of a school at 900 North Sycamore Avenue. Item number 6 is a final development plan in Sub-Area F of the Dolly Farm Village Planned Development District to construct a restaurant at 1010 South Highline Place. Item number 7 is the final development plan in Sub-Area A of the Eastern Hills Planned Development District to construct a 48-unit apartment building at 4200 South Sycamore Avenue. And that would conclude the items on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion from the, or are there any objections, from the audience on any items on the consent?
Lyndon, I'll be representing planning staff on items tonight. I did want to make the commission aware that staff is requesting to move item 4 to the regular agenda in order to address one condition. And we have received a request to defer item number 6 until the March 2nd Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Excuse me, are there any objections from the Planning Commission to any of the items on the consent agenda? Being none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, so moved.
A second. Okay. Been a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, same sign. The consent agenda is approved. We'll address item number 4 first. Go ahead, Dave.
Good evening. Thank you again. Item number 4 is a conditional use permit to develop a site greater than an acre and to allow off-sale alcohol within 500 feet of school. As you have been made aware by the staff report, there are no specific objections to the petition from either staff or from any members of the public that we've heard from. Just to go over it briefly, the existing zoning is in the C2 General Commercial District, and it has a compatibility rating of 3 in order to address the residential uses bordering it to the south. Location is at 1901 East 10th Street, and it does generally meet the conditional use permit standards that have been laid out in your staff report. The applicant, in Chapter 4 of the Shape Sioux Falls Comprehensive Plan, higher intensity land uses are not recommended against low intensity land uses unless mitigated through site design and or architectural characteristics. In this case, the applicant has provided a setback of 47 feet from the south property line to the point at which paving of the loading area begins. This large buffer area will incorporate the required detention pond and additional landscaping to ensure impacts to the residential properties are minimized. Because the application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed and requires a complete plan check by zoning and building services prior to obtaining a building permit, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit with the following conditions. The first one is that the property owner shall combine the property into one tax parcel or replat the site into one lot prior to approval of a building permit. The second is that this application is approval for Casey's convenience stores only. The third is that a security management plan shall be submitted to and approved by the Sioux Falls Police Department. And the condition that staff is requesting to add on to, in addition to those three listed, is a fourth one, which would allow no signage advertising alcohol or tobacco products to be visible from the public right-of-way. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you, Dave. Are there any questions for City? No?
Dave, Madam
Yep,
Chair, the fourth stipulation that you're adding, that's just pretty consistent with these type of...
It's a consistent condition with other approvals that we've done in the past. It just was omitted from the staff report.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Is the petitioner here? For Casey's? Will you come forward, please? Can you state your name for the record?
Gene Maurice with Sayer & Associates in Sioux
Okay.
Falls.
And Jean, are you okay with the addition of this fourth stipulation?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other additional questions for the petitioner? Okay. Seeing none, I'll look for commission action on item number 4.
Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I make a motion approval of the conditional use permit for item number 4 with the 4 following conditions.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 8, we'll move on to the regular agenda. If anybody was here for the consent agenda, you are now free to go. Okay, item number 8. Steve.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Steve Randall. I'll be representing staff, planning staff on this item and others this evening. Item 8 is an application for a major amendment to Scooters PD Planned Development District located on Cliff Avenue at 1108 East 2nd. The applicant is here this evening, Daniel Guillotte, First Immigrant Grocery, and the owner is Dan Hoyland. The request is to allow a grocery store in this planned development district. It's 4/10 of an acre. This item comes to you with a site plan, a grocery list, and a security management plan prepared by the applicant. On the north side of the property, we have residential development in an RD district. To the south, it's Monarch Sales Office in the C2. Salvation Army is in the RD district to the east, and it is residential neighborhood to the west in the RD residential district. We've given this a compatibility rating of 3, and it is a planned development district. The compatibility rating calls for special circumstances and design to be incorporated into land uses at this location. The PD has been previously established. The planned development district has been constructed and was occupied by Scooters, retail, trade, and services, and by a consignment store. Scooters is not in the building anymore, and the applicant would like to put a grocery store in. They provided us with a site plan showing the location of the store. Nothing else on the property is proposed to change. They will add their own signage to the existing sign panels that are there now. This particular planned development district was established, or was established to allow new development for the property of office and commercial uses that are compatible with adjoining land uses at the entrance to this established residential neighborhood. We did do a major amendment back in, 2009, to allow the consignment store as a retail trade and service. Scooters is also a retail trade and service, and the proposed use of grocery store we feel is an appropriate use as well. At the time that the application came in, we asked the applicant to spend some time with the neighbors, talking to the neighbors, let them know what the security management plan would be and what they intend to do with the property. And they have done so. They provided us with a map of the locations where they have gone and talked to the residents. About 50% of the properties within 250-foot distance. Within 600 feet, there is also a school and a park. The applicant has gone and talked to the Parks Department. They had no objection to the use, and also talked to the principal of the school, who expressed no objection to the use. Accessibility to the site is basically pedestrian from the neighborhood. There is some shared access to the two uses on the property, and that is not changing either. Staff continues to support limited trade and services at this location and is supportive of the grocery store use, with recommendations to modify the sub-area regulations to include in sub-area A, retail trade and service in association with a grocery store, and no on-sale or off-sale alcohol use is allowed. We've also put on the additional consideration that a security management plan approved by the planning director for retail trade and service in association with a grocery store. And that's primarily to work with the applicant to establish the hours of business and just under what conditions would they be providing security management for the property. We haven't had any calls on this from people in the neighborhood. I have talked to the owner, the realtor, and the applicant is basically all of the input that we have as far as staff in writing the report, and that concludes staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of Steve? Thank you, Steve. Is the petitioner here, please? Please come forward. Can you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Daniel Gate.
Okay. Any questions of Daniel? No? Okay. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. Look for any, excuse me, I'll look for commission action on item number 8.
Madam Chair, I'll move for approval of item number 8.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Item number 8 carries. Item number 9, please.
Item 9 is the applicant is Travis Peterson and the company representing Second Chance Auto. The owner of the property is Todd Olson, who has signed the application, and the purpose of this application is to allow motor vehicle sales and displays on the subject property at 1520 West 12th Street. It's about a third of an acre site in the C2 district. Includes a vacant building and parking lot are about the only improvements on the property. There is a screen fence or some signage that goes along the north side of the property next to a residential use, which is also owned by the owner of the property, apparently rented out for residential. We've assigned it a compatibility rating of 3, meaning that we do have potential conflicts with the residential use. Otherwise, all other commercial uses adjacent to the property and along this major arterial are compatible. Because it is a rental property and it is zoned commercial for the residential use to the north, we are considering the existing separation of fence, screen fence, and signage to be appropriate for the property, and to provide the necessary separation. Otherwise, then, we're dealing with the site plan that the applicant provided. Staff has worked with the applicant to revise that site plan, and there is a copy of that revised site plan included in your staff report. You see in front of you right now the plan that was submitted. We have tried to improve that by indicating an intersection safety zone where no parking of vehicles would be allowed, and also anchored concrete wheel stops that would be put in to accommodate diagonal parking of vehicles on display for sale at the required 10-foot setback in this commercial zoning district. The applicant has agreed to that, and I believe is here this evening to indicate their comments on the plan. We've noted by scale how many vehicles approximately would be allowed on the site. Of course, the applicant can put probably as many vehicles as they want on there as long as you can get through the property and maintain the required setbacks. But it looks to us like you could get 7 cars along the street and several cars back on either side of the building. Because the entire site is paved at the current time, and because the convenience store on the corner requires access to be shared with this property so that they can get in to provide service to their gas tanks, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use subject to this plan as presented. We've had no calls. The conditions that we would put on there: 1, that site improvements as indicated in a revised site plan signed by the applicant for the following improvements. A, an intersection safety zone to be marked and no parking allowed. B, provide anchored concrete wheel stops at the 10-foot front yard setback lines. C, provide a gated trash enclosure at the northeast corner of the property. And then maintain required screening in the parking lot, just to make sure that the property continues to be compatible in the neighborhood. That concludes staff report. Like I said, we had no calls.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve?
Steve, the use of the driveway by the C-store, is that something that has to be addressed with this, or is that a given?
Yeah, as far as maintaining the driveway for them, I don't think so, unless I know that the engineering department would like to get that driveway to line up with the street on the other side. But I think that that's probably something that's going to have to happen way in the future when the entire block redevelops. It can't really be done with this particular application. That's our thought, anyway.
Any other questions of Steve?
Steve, we got on the agenda, there was a request by the owner to add a stipulation to this, or a clause.
All right.
That it was to be used by second chance only.
I had indicated to the applicant that they would have to make that request to you personally this evening.
Okay.
And we did include it in the addendum to your report so you could look at it. It's basically a request. Well, I'll let the applicant make that request.
All right.
Since that request was made, I did talk to Todd Olson, and I believe they've been talking to each other about not requiring that. So I didn't say anything about it.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. Is the petitioner here, please? State your name for the record, please.
Travis Peterson.
Thank you, Travis. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, Todd and I have discussed it, and we no longer wish to have that stipulation in there.
Thank you.
All right.
Any additional questions, Travis? Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
Anybody from the audience have anything to add on this item, or any questions on item number 9? Okay. I'll look for commission action then on item number 9.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion for approval with the 2 stipulations.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Item number 9 carries. Item number 10.
The project name for item number 10 is Good Samaritan Senior Housing. It's a conditional use permit in the C3 Central Business District. The owner is indicated as, and applicant is indicated as Craig Lloyd Companies. And the purpose is to allow residential units on the first floor of this proposed project, this housing project. Project is located at 620 North Main Avenue. It's about a half an acre site, currently vacant, used for some overflow parking. The Shape Sioux Falls designates it as a developed area because it is in the downtown district. Attachments and provisions with the application include a site plan, floor plans, and building elevations. In the downtown district, we do have a C2 general commercial district located north of the subject property. It's a vacant, and it's a Crescent Electric building. It has a compatibility rating of 4, just because it is currently unoccupied. To the south in the C3 district, as well as to the east in the C3 district, we have downtown development. To the south, it's Larson Square parking lot, and to the east, it's currently vacant in the Brownsfield. To the west, we have a county parking lot that also has a compatibility rating of 4. The minor conflict potential here is mainly because of the proposed use and the impact that adjacent properties might have on it. Being a senior residential housing project, we're looking to establish a compatibility within the project itself as far as relating it to the surrounding uses. Proposed use is a 44-unit mid-rise senior living apartment project in the north end of the Central Business District. Dwellings located on the first floor require a conditional use in that district. The developer has a presentation of plans and renderings of a previously approved master plan for the development of the uptown area, approximately 6 acres of mixed-use urban development. That is also in the process of currently being revised because of changing market conditions and also because of the area itself and dealing with the potential occupants of the project. Therefore, the half-acre senior living apartment project doesn't and isn't intended to model the character of the existing downtown, but rather the character of the proposed uptown project. And we have some slides. I believe there's a overall plan, a master plan for buildings to be constructed within that area, and an overall rendering of buildings in that area that show compatibility of the proposed project with those buildings. In the urban core, we're looking at pedestrian-oriented but development with access to downtown facilities and transit routes. At the same time, we want to provide the minimum required parking, which is 0.4 of a unit space per unit. And they have provided the required parking on the property with access to improvements in 3rd Street. As this is an undeveloped site, those street improvements would also have to be made in order to complete the project. The project is described as only a portion of the legal description, and a replat is going to be provided in order to obtain a building permit. The conditional use permit would go forward without a landscaping plan at this point. All of the landscaping for the project is indicated to be in the public right-of-way. But when they come in and apply for a building permit, they will also have to apply for those improvements in the right-of-way to include landscaping, and a landscaping plan would have to be approved. Freestanding monument-style signage is indicated at 2 locations in the public sidewalk along Main Avenue. Again, any improvements in the public right-of-way will have to be approved by the city engineer, including outdoor lighting and sidewalk improvements. Security management will be addressed with the ownership and management of the property, and we expect that that particular aspect of the project will go forward simply because it is in the interest of the management company or Good Samaritan to maintain security management on their own property. Diagonal on-street parking shown on the plan must be approved by the City Council. The applicant is providing new information regarding the Uptown Master Plan to address conformance for this review of the conditional use, and the application can proceed forward with the following conditions based upon the applicant addressing issues with the planning commissioners here this evening. First condition would be that street construction and public right-of-way improvements for parking, sidewalk, landscaping, lighting, and signage are to be included in the project and completed as shown in plans approved by the planning director. And number two, 2 parking spaces at the building entrance are to be reserved and signed for short-term parking pickup and delivery. We've had no calls on this, and the applicant is present to answer questions. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody have any questions of Steve? Okay. Thank you. Is the petitioner here, please?
Good evening. Chris Torkelson, 1408 West Waterstone Drive, here on behalf of Lloyd Companies in conjunction with Good Samaritan Society. They do have a representative here also, should any questions be needed for them. We do plan on abiding by what Steve had put forth as far as the 2 requirements, and we do plan on working with the city on some of the other things that they raised in addition to a security management plan with Good Samaritan Society and Sioux Falls Police Department, need be. I guess I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions of Chris? No? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Anybody from the audience here to address item number 10?
I'm Dennis Bresky. I'm here for item 12, but I do happen to have the Crescent Electric building listed for sale, so I represent the neighbors to the north there. And we'll just let you know that they would have no problem with the proposed project here, and also wanted to inform you that the Crescent Electric building is under contract to be sold to a church, and I'm sure they would be supportive of the street conversion of the street to the parking the way it's shown there. They will be in front of you next month. They submitted their application. So just thought I'd let you know that as far as the property to the north there, there's no objection.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yep.
Anyone else from the audience? No? Thank you. I'll look for commission action on item number 10.
Madam Chair, I'll move for approval of item 10 with the 2 conditions stated in the report.
Okay.
I second.
Thank you. Motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. Item number 10 carries. Item number 11.
Having approved the use, we now get a chance to look at the design. And it is important in this area. Being a part of the Uptown project, there's an overall design concept that's been presented publicly and endorsed through several public hearings already. We just want to make sure that it's compatible in the Downtown Design Review District. I believe there's been some discussion previous about those areas of the Downtown Design Review District having a unique style and design to them, which can be compatible, and that's what the presentation tonight is for. Good Samaritan Senior Housing is proposing this project by Craig Lloyd. The development, again, with the minor or the compatibility rating of 4, where we need to address some of the conditions which can include design. In the C3 district, the developer presentation, again, is pretty much the same as what you've just seen. At the location, the extent of development, and the improvements proposed. As we look at the Downtown Design Review District, there are a number of items that are to be addressed. by the Planning Commission. First one being building orientation and setback, that the placement of new construction shall reflect the setback already established by surrounding buildings. And we believe that it has done that. It conforms as stated by the applicant. The setbacks for the buildings within this uptown project have all been coordinated with street improvements and are presented as in total. The building height, mid-block buildings, which this is a corner, shall not vary from the average height of other mid-block buildings by more than 10 feet, and so it is conforming as stated by the applicant. Building width, it has a 229 long building facade that has been divided into smaller segments using recessed segments, so in that sense it is conforming to the downtown design review requirement for that particular item, where construction of new buildings and the substantial reconstruction of existing buildings which exceed 40 foot of width shall incorporate a rhythmic division of the facade into smaller segments to maintain the patterns of width typically found in the surroundings of the site. Use of vertical features, minor insets or outsets of segments of the facade, and the sensitive placement and proportions of window openings are among the methods available. As you can see by the elevations, the breaking up of the facade into vertical segments and the location of windows in the upper levels indicating residential use. So it does conform with that, we believe. Building color and texture, color scheme shall be simple, using the minimum number of colors necessary to accentuate architectural features, and should complement the predominant hues of adjoining buildings. Again, we look to the overall master concept plan for Uptown, in which the proposed colors will be compatible. The applicant can address this in more detail. They are pretty much neutral colors, grays, whites, and browns. The materials are proposed to be compatible, again, with the development of the Uptown project. We have some materials that we typically don't see downtown in the older parts of downtown, but this is a new project and part of a new development, a major development in the downtown area, which is proposing to include materials such as vertical corrugated metal siding, lapboard cement siding, and metal screen accent panels that the applicant states will be complementary in design and placement as those adjacent buildings in the Uptown master plan. So we'll be looking for these applications and materials and colors in future plan proposals in the Uptown project. Proportion of openings, the applicant proposed that the size, spacing, and horizontal alignment and proportions of doors and window openings will reflect those predominantly along the block when the Uptown project is completed. As a residential project, residential on the first floor now, we're not looking for commercial treatment of windows, doors, openings, and awnings, things like that. It is a residential development, and so it's consistent in the window treatment, opening. At one end, you notice that there is a kind of a commercial treatment. That's because if you look at the floor plan, they indicate a large seating in there, area in there, which should be a dining room or assembly area. Historic building remodeling is not an applicable requirement. Horizontal alignment, it conforms, we believe, in the horizontal treatment layers of the building up to a three-story form. Roof forms require flat roofs, and it does conform there. Sidewalk coverings have not been proposed, but are indicated on the plan. Again, that is improvements in the public right-of-way and have to be approved by the city engineer. Signage, we do have the freestanding monument-style signs indicated at the corners, basically to identify an entrance into the property, and the identity of the property will have to be approved by the city. Parking and access. The parking requirements have been met. They are located behind the building, which is appropriate to a downtown use. Other considerations include landscaping, planter boxes, hanging flower baskets, window boxes, outdoor furniture, outdoor dining areas, and public art are encouraged wherever appropriate. There are some landscape forms that are indicated in the rendering on the back side of the parking lot, some vertical features, and then out front there are some recessed areas going up to the window locations on the main floor that appear to be covered with living ground cover, and possibly some flowers, perennials, and so on. Staff has indicated to them that to the applicant that would like to make sure that we identify the perimeter of the site as far as security goes, and they have indicated they would be willing to incorporate some features that define the perimeter of the site, such as vertical elements of some kind, which could be fencing, it could be ornamental grills, it could be something to do that as part of their landscaping plan. That pretty much concludes staff's design review. We've had no calls on this. It was included in the signage. I mean, it is not required to be signed for design review. The applicant has been meeting with city officials about the design and is prepared to address any questions that you might have. Staff is recommending approval of the design review, and that concludes staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of Steve?
Madam Chair, Steve, a couple things. The aerial perspective on page 104, there you go, doesn't match the site plan that's on page 105.
As far as the parking goes?
No, there's an L-shaped loft building in the perspective and just a single.
Oh, I see.
Is that
yeah
part of what you're discussing in terms of
changes,
a reconfiguration of the master plan?
Yeah. That's our understanding anyway. This is kind of a work in progress, yet they do have an overall base from which they're working.
Will that come back to the Planning Commission?
And that
too?
comes back to the Planning Commission again for design review at least,
Yeah.
if not an approved use under conditional use.
And then, as a part of the permitting process, trees in the parking lot would be addressed?
That's correct.
Okay. I think it looks good. I just noticed that there's a discrepancy there and wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
Could you go back to the color rendering of the entrance where it says Uptown?
This one?
The full plan?
The entrance into Uptown? I think it was at the very beginning. Okay, there we go.
See where
Yeah.
that building is back? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Steve? Thank you, Steve. Chris, do you want to come back up?
Again, Chris Torkelson, representing Lloyd Companies, in conjunction with Good Samaritan Society.
Are there any questions of Chris? No? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience like to address item number 11? No? Seeing none, I'll look for commission action on item number 11.
Madam Chair, I would make the motion for approval of item 11.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion and second on item number 11. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Item number 11 carries. Item number 12.
Item 12 is a minor amendment in the Valhalla PD Plan Development District in order to replat and transfer ownership of a portion of the existing office development at that location. At the same time, they would be reducing the number of required parking stalls from 116 to 102 and to reduce the required side yard setback from 10 feet to 0 feet. Again, these reductions are caused by the replat. As it is now, it conforms to all parking setback requirements as a combined office project, but by throwing that property line in there, changes everything. But we need to get that approved, because when you transfer ownership and the financing and so on, it needs to be shown that it can meet the requirements of setbacks and parking. We give it a compatibility rating of 5 in this neighborhood. It's identical to pre-existing zoning conditions and totally compatible. As far as the history of the project goes, city engineering approval is required for an access plan, including the applicant's property located along West 49th Street. Their replat indicates what you call a flag lot, in that the frontage is maintained onto the street access just for the sake of access and addressing on the lot split. The police department and the fire department were both interested in maintaining required building signage and addressing for the purpose of public safety. Located east of South Technology Drive and south of West 49th Street, it's going to have no impact on the adjacent development as far as future growth and improvements. The existing setbacks are as constructed. Proposed new property lines conform to the sub-area regulations, except where it's proposed for side yards in the parking lot. And we do have a precedent for that at other locations, where we've reduced the side yard setback from 10 feet, which is required for office, to 0 for parking only. There is, by drawing that lot line in there, they do maintain the 10-foot side yard for the 2 buildings. But for the parking, if we could get that approved, that would make the existing shared parking okay. As far as the existing parking requirements of 116, the east half would have 4 buildings with existing shared parking of 102. And that, again, that's just because of it is a shared parking lot now. It's just throwing that line in there. One of the properties doesn't technically meet the parking requirement. But they are providing a shared parking agreement between the 2 property owners, and that would maintain meeting the existing requirement of 116 spaces. Signage plan is existing as approved and constructed. No additional signage is proposed. Lighting is approved and constructed. The existing trash enclosure is indicated in the west end of the interior parking lot. Any additional trash enclosures will require building permits and should be similar in design and construction, unless they're going to be sharing that existing trash enclosure, continue to do that. The proposed change in property ownership is not changing the land use or compatibility with adjacent development in the PD. And an existing sidewalk connects the entrances of all 6 buildings fronting existing parking lots, so that the agreement between property owners to share the parking filed at the courthouse is going to continue the same arrangement. Because the physical site, building, and parking conditions are not being changed by the proposed property subdivision, staff recommends approval of the minor amendment for the plan as presented, subject to the following conditions. 1, a replat of the subject property is required and has gone through the review process at City Hall, but has not been filed at the courthouse yet, pending tonight's action. Number 2, a shared parking agreement is required to be filed, and I believe that's going to be done in conjunction with the plat. And 3, the required side yard setback reduction to 0 is for parking only. And we've had no calls on this. That concludes staff report.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions of Steve on item number 12? No? Thank you, Steve. Is the petitioner here, please?
Dennis Bresky again, 101 North Main. Sorry I wasn't here last time. Hope you didn't have to listen to that twice. But any questions, I'll be glad to answer. And Gene Maurice is here from RF Sayer, who put the plat together and helped us with this whole plan. Be glad to answer any questions.
You're good, Dennis. Thank you. Anybody from the audience wish to speak on item number 12? No? Okay. I'll look for commission action on item number 12.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion for approval with the 3 stipulations.
Thank you, Kent. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, same sign. Item number 12 carries. Item number 13.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission, viewers of Channel 16, and members of the audience. I'm Shauna Goldammer, and I'm the Zoning Enforcement Manager for the City of Sioux Falls, or as I like to say, your Zoning Enforcement Manager. As you know, the City of Sioux Falls Planning and Building Services Department is taking a comprehensive approach to the updates to the zoning ordinance to try to get us more in sync with Shape Sioux Falls, our new comprehensive plan. Parking is no exception. The current requirements of the zoning ordinance were discussed extensively by a group of stakeholders. The study group was drawn from a mix of citizens. There were 9 separate meetings from August to December of 2010. These meetings were led by Jim Lockwood until he retired in October of 2010, and then I kind of took over that group. These meetings were held at the Owate Community Center and were open to the public. There was a variety of parking topics discussed, both in current conditions of the zoning ordinance, also keeping in mind the Shape Sioux Falls policy directions for parking within the city limits. Residential parking requirements were being discussed by the City Council and their Land Use Committee about the same time. There were also topics that weren't as timely, including the number of parking and loading spaces. They offered suggestions for minimum improvements and standards for parking surfaces. Also, opportunities for green initiatives were discussed to minimize paving surfaces, and parking reductions were also included. The rest of the report is presented to you in sections regarding current conditions and opportunities for improvement for parking. Some of the opportunities included were things like tiering the number of spaces for warehousing or multifamily projects. Also for parking reductions, allowing hard surfacing requirements to be decreased while not tying it to the building as current standards require. Also, minimum improvements like different green incentives were discussed. We talked about how to green parking lots, but then also try to balance it out with things like snow removal and how do you accommodate that. There are a variety of creative thinking in the report, and I hope that you take the time to kind of go mull over it. There are a number of opportunities. Parking study did recognize that the current ordinance is out of sync with Shape Sioux Falls. Many policies for parking overlapped with landscaping, which has been previously presented to you by Dave Loveland and his crew. Of the 9 policies in Shape Sioux Falls, there were quite a few that were specific to landscaping, and this group didn't dwell too much on landscaping, primarily the functionality of parking. Current zoning ordinances were discussed extensively by the group, and the group was mindful of the direction of the policy of Shape Sioux Falls, as well as the awareness of cost of parking. The parking does have an associated cost, but it also, these improvements add value and marketability of projects. Many opportunities are presented in this report and allow the zoning ordinance to be updated and make the policies and goals of Chapter 5, Shape Sioux Falls and Shape Places, the foundation of parking requirements. Steve Gasper was a member of our parking committee, so I'd ask him to add anything that you'd like. Otherwise, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding the report and our study group meetings.
Thanks, Shauna. Are there questions, or Steve, do you have anything to add?
No, it was, other than that, sometimes it was quite heated on some of the discussions, but it was a good, I learned a lot from it, put it that way.
And there is at least one member of the study group that's here. I don't know if he wants to add anything otherwise. Thank you.
Shauna, all I will add is that as we have delved into this Shape 2035, and you peel back each layer, there's a lot more to each component than you think. I mean, we all think parking, we have to have it. How can it be that, if you don't have enough, then you know you have a problem. If you have too much, you don't want to pay for that either. But parking just is like every other thing that we have found with signage and landscaping. There's just a lot more to it than meets the eye. So I certainly want to thank all yourself for facilitating and all the community volunteers that gave your input, because really we can draft all these things, but if we don't have the input of the stakeholders, it really is all for naught then. So thank you, Sean, and any of you that participated. So do we just have to accept this? Okay. I'd like to do that.
Madam Chair, I'd make the motion to accept the parking study group's report on current city ordinances.
Thank you, Meredith.
I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed? We've approved the parking study group ordinance. Item number 14.
Currently, the zoning ordinance does not allow for recreational motor vehicles to be parked or stored in the front yards of residential neighborhoods. The purpose of regulating such vehicles is to prevent vehicle impacts on residential neighborhoods, such as long-term parking and storage of said vehicles. The Planning Office has been asked to consider an amendment to the zoning ordinance to revise residential parking to allow for temporary parking for recreational vehicles. In the current ordinance and regulations applying to parking outside or inside an enclosed structure in the residential zoning districts, the parking of personal motor vehicles as well as trailers and recreational motor vehicles is permitted anywhere in the rear yard, a minimum of 2 feet from all property lines. However, recreational motor vehicles shall not be occupied nor provided with separate utility hookups. All unlicensed motor vehicles utilized for racing events shall be parked inside a completely enclosed garage. And that's the summary of the existing ordinance. In considering the proposed ordinance amendment, staff recognizes the need to allow recreational vehicles to be parked at a residence temporarily for loading, unloading, and cleaning during those times when the vehicle is being used, and this was also discussed at the Sioux Falls Parking Study Group 2010. The proposed ordinance amendment would add language that allows the parking of one resident-owned recreational vehicle temporarily for a period of less than 48 hours for customary cleaning and loading on an existing concrete driveway or its equivalent if the required on-site parking is also provided. Because the subject amendment conforms to state law and provides clarity to applicants and the public, staff recommends approval of this amendment. It's included in its entirety in your staff report. And that concludes staff report.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions to Steve on item number 14?
Madam Chair, Steve, is there any limit on or any discussion on the size of the RV? Or could it be the huge?
By definition?
Yeah.
There is no size limitation by definition. We know that it can't block public right-of-way or sidewalk.
I was going to say, yeah,
and
that would
some
seem
of them
to me
get
like
to be pretty big.
That would be an issue, parking on the driveway, that it would stick out in most parts of town.
There are other things in the ordinance, the city ordinances, that would have to be considered other than just allowing it to be there. It can't create a traffic hazard or a safety hazard.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else for Steve? Okay. Thank you, Steve. Is anyone from the audience like to speak on item number 14?
Hi, I'm Rochelle Scott. My address is 310 North Duluth. I'm a resident of Sioux Falls, but I'm also the owner of Scott's RV Traveland. I'm an RV and camper dealer out on West Russell, and I'd like to address this issue and encourage approval. I think that this is a reasonable request and a reasonable compromise, certainly for both non-RV citizens as well as RV citizens. I think RV owners, realize that they have to be good neighbors and they shouldn't expect to be able to park permanently or for long periods of time. There's already obviously parking allowances in the rear with the setbacks and that sort of thing. But I think to be fair to RV citizens, allowing them to be able to load and unload, to perhaps, as an example, bring their camper home on a Thursday night from storage, because again, if they are not storing it in the rear of, in the setback as is already allowed for, they are paying for storage off-site. And many of those are on the outskirts of town and T and Harrisburg areas, things like that. To be able to allow them to perhaps bring it home on a Thursday night, pack it up, everybody goes off to school and work on Friday, or maybe the kids are out of school, but everybody goes off and does their thing on Friday, comes home right away after work on Friday and loads up and heads off to Oakwood, Lake Chautauqua, the river, that sort of thing. Sunday night they come home to be able to park it, unload it, let it sit overnight, and then run it off to the storage building before work on Monday morning, or perhaps even that night. But again, to not put them in conflict with their neighbors where they have to try to quick sneak it on and throw their clothes and the children's toys and the groceries and all that sort of thing in there. I think that it's less than 48 hours. It's a temporary thing. To your question or your concern, perhaps, if they would be too long, my assumption is that this allowance would not be over and above the fact that they would still have to obviously not restrict sidewalk. None of us, we all know we can't park across the sidewalk, whether it's with our car, with an RV, that sort of thing. And I don't think that allowing this amendment would take away from the fact that there are other things that would protect those sorts of things if they did perhaps have a motorhome of 38, 40, 42 feet and had a shorter driveway where it wouldn't fit. I think people know that, and that certainly is not asking to override that ordinance or those laws. I think that it's reasonable that, again, the less than 48 hours, it's only for unloading, loading, cleaning. I think it keeps good neighbors so that those who are RV owners don't have to be in conflict with their neighbor. Or, if you do own an RV and it's stored off-site, how are you supposed to get your clothing and your groceries and that sort of thing in there? RVing is a very family-oriented thing, so it's not like you're just trying to pack for a few. It's usually, children and clothing and toys and groceries again. I think it's family-friendly, it's citizen-friendly for both the RV owner, the non-owner. It has a very limited time frame to it. It has limited sorts of use for, again, cleaning, unloading. It's not meant as storage, and very clearly less than 48 hours really isn't storage. Again, those RVers are already paying for storage off-site. And we also should be reasonable and realize it's probably only going to be seasonally that people are going to need this. A few months out of the year for them to allow them less than 48 hours to support a family-friendly thing and let them be good citizens with their neighbors and comply with the law rather than trying to hurry up and skirt outside the law and hope the neighbors don't get upset or notice. I think, I would encourage, again, approval. It's reasonable, it's fair for both RV owners and non-owners, in my opinion. Again, I encourage you to think about these things and approve. Thank you for your time.
Does anybody have any questions of Rochelle?
Madam Chair, what would be typically the size of the RVs that you sell, the self-contained
The
drivable ones?
majority, I would say probably 80% of what I sell are to families. Families are certainly, for myself, and almost I would say I can speak for many of the RV dealers around here, it's mostly to families, certainly to some snowbirds, but families more so, and they're usually 24, 26, 28 feet, right in there. We are a motorized dealer, and certainly I have 42, 46-foot motorhomes, but I only sell a few of those a year, and and most of those folks have large indoor storage units and have a lot more storage and leave more things in, and they are the snowbirds that go for months at a time, so they don't have the needs like families will. So I would say the average, I think 24 to 26 feet is a real good average, and my guess would be that 80%, maybe even more than that, would fall into that category. Certainly some shorter, a few longer, but that would be.
And then the towed trailer types, what size would those be?
That is the towed trailer types. Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. The motorized are not. There's not a lot of family-friendly motorized, so most families go with the towable types, either the travel trailer, which is the bumper, or the fifth wheel, which of course then you need a pickup. That again, those are right around the 24 to 26, maybe 28 feet. That is 80% of them. Motorized for families and motorized in general probably makes up 10%, and if you have a family motor home, and they're very rare, they probably right around the 32 to 36 foot. And then again, the large motorized, which are more of the motorhome market, I would say in this area, are meant for the snowbirds, and those are large 40, 42 foot motorhomes. And again, most of those folks, those are $200,000 and $300,000 units. Those are in very nice storage units, and many of those folks are snowbirds and go away for. They don't often. I don't see them often parking them on their driveway to load them. Maybe some, but I think what we're really talking about, probably 90% of the time, are families with bumper pull campers of an average of about 26 feet. That is my estimation, just knowing my customer base and just generally how even the three-state area uses and buys campers and RVs.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Rochelle? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience wish to address this item? Commissioner?
Hi, Greg Jamison, Sioux Falls City Council. How are you guys? Thanks for all your work. I brought this forward with staff's help. Listen to me calling them staff. With the city's help. The request came from a constituent who was looking for RVs to be parked all summer long. And I thought, well, that seems like a fair and reasonable idea. But if you review some of the history of that proposal, it's failed twice now, probably even more than that. But as early as May of 2004, it failed with a split council vote. So after further consideration, I determined that, and with the help of the city, 48 hours seemed like a reasonable compromise. As it is today, if you have a 22-foot long or further vehicle, you can't even park it on the street. So if you had a recreational vehicle like that, you couldn't even come home to get the kids with it. You couldn't park it in your driveway to load up or unload, any of that. So all I was trying to find was a compromise. South Dakota is a recreational state. We should encourage activities like this for economic development and a whole lot of other reasons. And, to address some of the issues of parking over the sidewalk. Absolutely, we're not looking to change any of that. We would still enforce that if you parked your own car over the sidewalk. You wouldn't be allowed to do that. And a lot of the trailers that get pulled in or backed in front of a house would be backed into the driveway. So the trailer, the hitch, and those kinds of things would be closest to the sidewalk. So even for pedestrians who might be walking, they'll actually have better visibility than you would if you had a Suburban backed up right to the edge of where the sidewalk ends, because you could see past the trailer hitch, or if it's a fifth wheel and that arm is reaching out, there's still visibility through it. So we're trying to find a way to compromise the use of recreational vehicles within the city. Currently as it is right now, you could park an RV in your front, in your driveway if the house was, I believe, some 60 feet from the sidewalk. Well, there's very few homes that are going to have that, and plus then you couldn't park in the first 25 or 30 feet. So It's really not set up for residents within the city limits. So if you have a driveway that does not allow you to fit your RV in that space between the garage and the sidewalk, it won't work for you. You'll need to find a different house or some other place to park your RV to load it or unload it. So not trying to change a lot of things, but just try to a slight compromise and look for your approval. Any questions? Or
Thank you. Any discussion on item number 14? I'll look for commission action.
Madam Chair, I'd make the motion to recommend approval of the zoning ordinance amendment.
I second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed?
Yes.
Item number 14 carries. Item number 15.
Good evening again. I am bringing to you another commercial or ordinance revision proposal. This one dealing primarily with what we call existing commercial vehicles. Currently, the zoning ordinance does not allow for commercial vehicle parking in residential areas and defines commercial vehicles as any vehicle with more than 16 square feet of signage in which is adapted, designed, equipped, and used to perform commercial functions. The purpose of regulating such vehicles to prevent commercial vehicle impacts on residential neighborhoods is to prevent commercial vehicle impacts on residential neighborhoods, such as overnight parking and storage of those vehicles. Commercial vehicles are not allowed to park in residential areas outside of the time that a work request is being performed. But what the current ordinance does not reflect is a recent evolution of attachments to personal passenger vehicles in order to provide services such as landscaping, contracting, or minor utility work. These vehicles often incorporate signage in excess of 16 square feet in order to identify the company or organization performing the work. Staff has received a request to review a proposed ordinance amendment of removing the 16 square foot of signage portion of the commercial vehicle definition. In response, staff evaluated the definition in its entirety and determined that additional updates were warranted in order to reflect the current realities. Many companies or organizations assign service vehicles to their staff to have around the clock for on-call duties or commuting priorities. Under the current definition, those vehicles with attachments such as ladder racks or tool cases are not allowed to park in residential areas. If not for these minor attachments, the vehicles can be defined as personal passenger vehicles. By adding a definition to the zoning ordinance that would define service vehicles and providing the ability to park these service vehicles in residential areas at the residence of the operator, staff finds that most, if not all, of the conflicts seen in today's ordinance could be remedied. The removal of the signage measurement as a defining factor for commercial vehicles also enables the ordinance to more readily accommodate preferences of the residents. Removal of the signage provision in the commercial vehicle definition will allow personal passenger, service, and commercial vehicles to be defined and regulated by the nature of their use. Planning staff has provided copies of the ordinance to industry representatives and has asked for comments. I personally have not received any feedback from some of those representatives, although I am aware that the city clerk's office was contacted by one person who was in agreement with the proposal. So as I noted, the proposed ordinance will revise the definition of commercial vehicles, add a definition for service vehicles, and establish the parking regulations for service vehicles. And because the subject application updates the zoning ordinance to reflect commercial and service vehicles in current use and provides for reasonable allowance for service vehicle parking, staff is recommending approval of the zoning ordinance amendment. I do have a PowerPoint that's available if you want to see it to kind of differentiate what we're talking about too, and I can bring that up.
Sure.
All right, well, we'll just begin with personal vehicles. We're all aware of what those are. I mean, we talked about minivans, your regular sedans or pickup truck. And service vehicles are allowed for residential parking under the proposed ordinance, and this is essentially what we're talking about, the addition of a ladder rack onto a pickup. or onto a minivan, or sometimes the tool casements within the back of a pickup would be defined as service vehicles, and therefore be allowed to be parked in residential areas overnight at the residence of the person who has the vehicle under their care, or during the time that the service is being provided. So you can see some examples of pictures as we go through it of what those types of service vehicles would be, with pretty limited impact, if any, on residential areas. When we get to commercial vehicles, these are not allowed to park in residential areas unless right at the moment of their service providing. And this is where you see the difference as we go through some of them, where these vehicles are specifically intended to provide commercial functions. And so that's just a quick example of what we're talking about. So, as I noted, we are recommending approval of the ordinance amendment. I can take any questions.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Any questions for Dave? Here it is.
Madam Chair, David, this in part reflects what's really been happening.
Absolutely, yep.
And in terms of the personal vans and pickups that aren't for heavy construction, let's say.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dave? No? I'll look for commission action on item number 15. I'm sorry, is anybody from the audience here? Thank you. You've been waiting all night. I'd hate to pass you by.
My name is Mike Drummond with Mid-Continent Communications, and we just wanted to thank everyone involved for revising the ordinance for this. It was going to help a lot of people and everything. We just wanted to say thanks and hope that it gets your approval tonight.
Thank you, Mike. Sorry about that.
And that's okay.
Anybody else? Come on up.
Kyle Orth, 2909 North Limegrass Avenue. And just like that picture right there just brings something to mind here to include for, like, granted that trailer wouldn't be there. There's city employee vehicles that go home with your city employees on on-call. Would that style of pickup, which some of the departments have, be allowed? Just maybe want to make sure you have all your bases covered before it does go in.
Point well noted.
And then maybe another one for like towing services that are on call all the time.
Sure. Thank you, Kyle. Shauna.
Hello. Kevin asked me to come up and kind of clarify the difference, specifically regarding tow trucks. Now, there was quite a heated debate in the public about tow trucks, and it specifically includes tow trucks in the definition of a commercial vehicle. What we're trying to do is accommodate those vehicles that don't have much impact into a residential neighborhood. And so this type of vehicle would not be allowed under the proposal that's before you. The pictures that are provided are pictures of violations that are occurring. So,
to Kyle's point, though, Shauna.
Right, whether it's a city vehicle or not. Right, yeah. This applies to everybody.
To Kyle's point, though, do we have city vehicles going home with people overnight that would violate this? I mean, are we in violation of our own ordinance before we...
Not on my fleet the building inspectors or the zoning office does not have a vehicle like that. Okay. I'm not sure if Public Works, they shouldn't be, if they are parking them in a residential district.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Shauna, if somebody has a vehicle in their neighborhood that shouldn't be there, who should they contact and how should they go about that?
Right. If you any violation can be submitted to the city anonymously if you'd like. That can be done via the website, siouxfalls.org. You can also call the zoning office, 367-8254. You can call the general line. You can call 211. There's a lot of options for people to report alleged violations of any code within the city limits. So just contact us, and what we'll do is follow up and investigate the violation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Shauna? Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to speak on this item? Okay. I'll look for commission action on item number 15.
Madam Chair, I'll move for approval of item 15 as proposed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on item number 15? Since I haven't allowed any discussion all night, I thought I'd allow it on the last one. Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
Yes.
Any discussion? Item number 15 carries. Item number 16.
Is that adjournment?
Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second on that.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Good night, everybody.
I thought I missed something.